Hi, I'm Josh and welcome to my channel. In this video I'm going to be talking about my favorite books of 2019. Okay, so I have my 10 favorite books here, but I'm going to start with 5 honorable mentions, so basically 15 books in total. Let's start with Fearful Symmetries, edited by Ellen Datlow. This is an anthology of short stories that are basically all horror. I was trying to diversify my horror readings last year, as I have a habit of only reading Stephen King, and in doing so I found this editor, Ellen Datlow, who has a shit ton of different anthologies that tend to be weird science fiction or weird fantasy and horror, and I read several last year. This is one I wanted to highlight just because it was my favorite, specifically because this one happened to be just the right focus of horror that I'm interested in. That is, I really like demonic, supernatural stuff, and this one was very heavy in that. It's all about trying to inspire a level of fear, hence the name Fearful Symmetries. I recommend checking out Ellen Datlow and just looking at the different ones that are there. You can probably find something that has the specific niche of horror that you're most appealed to. The next one I want to talk about is Gloria Bryant's History of the Future by A.S. King. This is a recommendation of books in Lala. I absolutely love this one. This is one of the few books of YA that I enjoyed last year, so I'm finally starting to find YA books that I really resonate with, and this is one that I definitely did. It has sort of a dystopian alternative history, or rather dystopian future, where you have this girl who can basically see into the future and see into the past after she does this really weird thing. And there's a lot of questions of mental health in this, and it really just follows this young girl and her friend, and I just really enjoyed the writing style here. It's so weird, the way she presents it is just so different, and I really enjoyed it. And I also just love the science fiction fantasy side of it, the magical realism. Either way, I'm really excited to read more A.S. King. The next one I want to talk about is going to be Red Shirts by John Scalzi, and this is another author I want to read more of because I read this at the recommendation of my advisor, Dr. Catherine Niche, and I absolutely loved it. It's basically a spoof on Star Trek, where you have all these red shirts who keep dying for dumb reasons on Star Trek, and this is a universe where these characters, these minor secondary characters in this ship, keep dying, and the difference is because it's reality, these people are recognizing this pattern of people doing really dumb things and people dying for it. And then for some reason, this really advanced civilization is not catching on as something being weird, something going wrong here. Because normally this type of death rate should not be acceptable in such an advanced civilization. Anyways, it was so meta and it's just so fantastic. I highly recommend this book. As I talk about it, I'm starting to wonder why I didn't put it in my top 10. I don't know. It's just, yes, I have favorites. Okay. The next one I want to talk about is Little Fires Everywhere by Celeste. This is one that I was really excited to read and I really enjoyed. I don't know if it's my favorite yet, because I don't know, because it didn't resonate as much as the others did, but it definitely made me want to reread her last book, which I remember enjoying and we don't remember much of. But in any case, I just really enjoy this type of domestic contemporary fiction, which really focuses on characters and family, and it's exactly the type of drama that I'm interested in, and I highly recommend Celeste. The next and last honorable mentions is going to be Circe by Madeline Miller. This is one I really enjoyed. I think I gave this nearly 5 stars, but for some reason I didn't give it a full 5 stars, specifically because there was something about it that didn't make it really stand out. I don't really have an interest to reread this. I don't know why that is. Everything about this novel seemed perfect. It had the right amount of fantasy, nice Greek mythology, which I was also into, and then it got me excited to read more. And I have read more, and I look forward to reading more by Madeline Miller next year, or rather this year. Now, to move on to my top 10 books of 2019, now that I have my honorable mentions out of the way, I want to start with one of the first books I read. I think it was the second one. That is The First 15 Lies of Harry August by Claire North. This book is basically like Groundhog's Day. We have this character who dies at a certain age, and then he comes back alive with memories of his past life, and basically he's reliving the same life. But the problem is that every time he comes back to life, he notices things keep changing slightly, and he's starting to find out that there's this sort of apocalypse coming, and it keeps getting closer and closer every time he restarts. And it's this really fun narrative that is told in a non-linear fashion. It was believable stakes. It was this question of what's going to happen here. Is this going to be a predictable ending, or might they actually lose? And I don't want to spoil what actually happens, but let's just say I don't mind I'm fine with a dark ending or a happy ending. I'm just happy to have an uncertainty going into it, and this definitely gave me that. And again, the non-linear fashion of this type of story I thought was just really well done. When I think about time travel stories, which are really my favorite type of genre here, or subgenre even, there are certain ways that you could use that. It could be fun, it could be easy. What this does is it really uses it to the max in a way that I think really highlights the amazing type of plot development that can be done when you use something like time travel. And I think Claire North just uses it expertly, and that's why I absolutely love this book. I can't wait to reread it eventually. I highly recommend it. On that note of time travel, I read From Eternity to Here by Sean Carroll, which is a non-fiction book all about the nature of time. Now, I read this because of my fascination with time, wanting to better understand time and appreciate it as a function of reality. Now, I thought this was a really good book. It gave really good background of the science, and he basically used it to explore the philosophical side of time. Like, why is it that we experience time from the past to the future? Why does it seem to be going in this direction of time as opposed to going backwards? But that did not make any sense. Essentially, physics seems to insinuate that time is more than just the now. It is the past, it is the future, it is all points in time. That is the nature of having a dimension of time. Let's just say that I thought it was a really fun exploration and still really grounded in the science and really well articulated, which is Sean Carroll is just very well known for doing. The next book I want to talk about is The Calculating Stars by Mary Robinette Kowal. And this is an alternative history book set in the 1950s when you have this asteroid hit Washington. And the real problem is that the asteroid was so large that it is triggering a climatic event where you have this dramatic cooling, but eventually you're going to have a significant warming. Basically, it's climate change being sped up to a matter of decades rather than a matter of centuries or millennia. It follows this Jewish woman, scientist and engineer, who is basically trying to convince the government that this is the case, this is happening, and we have to push our space program to get to space sooner and faster than we have in this timeline. And I thought it was just a fantastic novel, not just because of the science fiction side of it, which is really fun, trying to see the development of this type of space program, but in how it basically attacks sexism and racism and xenophobia head-on in the novel. Because that's really where this book shines through. Not just in how it represents that type of impact event, but in how Robinette Carroll addresses the lack of diversity in science and engineering in NASA in the past. And this book just does a fantastic job in giving representation and giving real characters time to develop and time to exist and prove that they are actually there to exist. And I absolutely love this book. I cannot wait to read the next one in the series. Highly recommend it. The next book I want to talk about is The Good House by Tananarive. I've talked about this a lot. This book is something I think I gave 4.5 stars, maybe 4.25 last year, because I didn't love the ending. But nevertheless, I still love the book as a whole. I thought it's basically about this house that is essentially haunted, but Tananarive ties in a sort of the Haitian history of Buddhism and things like that, to basically gives it a new twist than what you might be traditionally used to. And I thought that side of the story was just really creative and really well done. At the same time, I thought it still maintained the type of tone that I'm looking for in a horror story. It reminded me a lot of The Shining from the movie and the book, where you have this ominous setting and this house which seems so alive and so, I guess demonic is the best way of describing it. It was just really well done. She actually references The Shining in this book. And even if I didn't love the ending, I thought the book stood out very well in any case. And the next book I want to talk about is going to be, Jesus Christ! Next book I want to talk about is going to be Kindred by Octavia Butler. This is my all-time favorite book of all time. That was redundant. And in any case, I reread this last year for the first time since 2015, I think. And this is essentially about a modern-day black woman. 1970 was when the book was made, so that's the modern day. Set back to the antebellum South, where she has to save this young white boy whose family owns slaves. And every time he's in trouble, she gets sent back. And when she's back there, she has to figure out how to survive until she can get back, because she doesn't exactly know what's going on. Let's just say this is a very creative science fiction story, and then it uses, or rather, Butler uses this time travel device to really address the horrors of slavery and of racism in the past. There's an excellent discussion of what it means to be racist, where racism comes from, the nature of racism and how it is basically taught and not something you're born with, And I think that's something very important to think about, especially as someone from the South. The next book I want to talk about is going to be If We Were Villains by M.L. Rio. This is a book I read, also at the recommendation of Books on Lala, and I really love this book. The more I think about it, the more it really stands out, because in general, I don't necessarily love thrillers. I do enjoy them, but they don't necessarily stick out as one of my favorites. But there's something about this and the characters that I just really resonated with. It was sort of a college setting, and as a graduate student, maybe that's what it was. I just thought it was really well told, and it was the performance side of the audiobook was just fantastic. And I was really just here for the characterization and the motivation of the characters and just the choices they made, the drama. It was everything I wanted in a book. I absolutely love this book. I guess I should tell you what the book is about, shouldn't I? So this is a book set at a school for studying Shakespeare. Basically, it's a college setting. We have these kids who are a little bit more pretentious than the average Joe because they study Shakespeare, or at least some of them are. And I kind of enjoyed it more because of that. I liked having characters that were kind of annoying. I mean, I enjoyed the drama that went along with that. But what the story basically is about, what the story is about is this group of friends who experience certain things during their time at the school, and it all leads up to some dramatic event that we know happened at the very start of the novel, because we're basically being told the story like 10 years down the line from one of the students who had to be in prison for all these years because of whatever happened. And what it involves is just a lot of delightful drama. The next one is also a thriller, that is Girls Burn Brighter by Shobha. And this is about two Palestinian girls. I misspoke. Not Palestinian. They live in Pakistan. And it's their experience trying to survive in this type of environment, with the sexism that they have to deal with, especially in Pakistan or in the Middle East, where life is even more difficult. And this was a very dark novel about two women who basically have very little comfort in the world, and that little comfort is with each other. And it's about them getting separated and eventually trying to find their way back to each other. And in doing so, they have to suffer an amazing amount of pain and endure through it all to try and reach this happy ending if they can. And I thought it was just so moving, so emotionally wrought, that I just absolutely adored this book. Honestly, it reminded me of The Handmaid's Tale. You have this society, which is a very patriarchal society, which is basically abusing these women. They're trying to survive, and it's very similar, except I actually thought this was told better than The Handmaid's Tale. The next book I want to talk about is Middle Game by Shauna McGuire. I didn't love this book as much as a lot of people, and I'm kind of surprised I'm including this on this list. I think I may have given it 4.5 stars. And I think at the time it was partly because the villain was somewhat one-dimensional, but also because it didn't shine through as much as I was hoping it would. I think part of it was just my expectations were a little too high. But then the more I think about this, the more I talk about it with my friends who have read it too, I realize that I think I liked it a lot more than I realized, because it's one of those books that just keeps sticking with me. It's sticking in my head, thinking about all the different choices she made, the direction she took with this, and I just really loved it. So it's hard not to say that it's one of my favorites, because I want to reread this. It's one of the books I want to reread the most, probably. And this is essentially about these two twins who are created by alchemy, I think, or is it astrology? I think it's alchemy, to try and harness this alchemist power of the universe to try and take over the world, something like that. And it's told in this non-linear fashion where you have basically multiple timelines and trying to parse through it to try and figure out what it is that's going on. So it's a nice mystery, nice science fiction set in a contemporary setting. But also, the characterization is fantastic. I actually talked about this with a friend, and they didn't like it as much because they felt like there was too much focus on the siblings, on the twins. And I was like, what is wrong with you? Because that's the best part of the book. I really connected with that sibling relationship, and it was something that I loved about it. Highly recommend this book, and I'm probably going to reread it again this year. Now, the next book I want to talk about is going to be All Systems Red by Martha Wells, and this is more just to represent the series as a whole, the Murderbot Diaries, which is about this futuristic society where you have this robot who is able to break its governor module, basically what it is that governs what it's allowed to do. And because it does that, it can do whatever it wants. It can murder people if it wanted to, and that's hence the name Murderbot. And The fact is, it doesn't want to do that. All it cares about is, one, being left alone because it's a little asocial, and two, it wants to just watch a bunch of TV shows, listen to podcasts, and a bunch of different things like that. It just wants to be lazy like anybody else. I thought this book was clever, funny, and also just a really well done plot. I don't usually like high sci-fi. I don't think it's necessarily classified as that, even though it is set in the far future. But I thought it was just a really fantastic exploration of what a truly free robot or AI might actually be like. I mean, we are seemingly free and intelligent, have our own consciousness, and what do we want to do? We don't want to take over the world, we just want to be lazy and be left alone. Well, at least I know I do. In any case, I absolutely love this book. I highly recommend the entire series. There's a new one coming out as a full-length novel. I'm really excited for that. The next book I want to talk about is going to be Every Heart a Doorway by Shauna McGuire. Now, this is arguably one of my favorite new books or new series of all time. I'm sure I love it more than Harry Potter, and I think I would say it's my favorite series now. It's just this Narnia type story where you have these characters who basically go through this portal, this doorway, into this magical world, or magical worlds. But it isn't really about the worlds per se, but rather it's about what happens after they leave that world. Because you go there, you feel like you're home for the first time ever, and then for some reason you get pushed away, forced back into our mundane existence, and you have to think about, how do I get back? Or how do I survive here? How does one go from this magical place and then try and survive in a place like Earth, where everything is just so sad and depressing and plain? And this is a fantastic exploration of what effect that might have on a child. Now, as we go along further in the series, they do start to explore these worlds more, and I think they're all just very, very well done, because nothing is just the same. Every world is unique to the child, because the worlds are catered, or rather appeal to different children depending on the personality. And because of that, the creativity and variety of stories in this series is just fantastic. And I just absolutely love this series. There's something about this type of magical setting that I fall in love with so much. I've always had a very fantastical mind. The dreams I've had since childhood, even till today, as a scientist, are mind-boggling that I could somehow fall for this kind of stuff and not care in my dreams. But it's just, I just really connected with this, and I just loved that it wasn't as simplistic as, say, Narnia, where it really addresses the more dark side of this type of reality. And I just thought it was really well done. I highly recommend this series to anyone and everyone. And if you don't like it, well, then we can't be friends. That was a joke, mostly. Those are my favorite books of 2019. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to like and subscribe. And let me know what your favorite book or books were of last year in the comments below. I'm interested to hear. Thank you so much. I hope you have a great day.